I woke up in jail. I had that terrible feeling. The first moment I woke up, if you've ever drank before, you know this feeling. First, the moment you wake up and it seems like everything's okay, and then within a second, the feeling of fear comes over you, the feeling of guilt, the feeling of shame, the feeling of the thought, what happened? What did I do? One morning, I woke up in a jail in Australia, in Brisbane. And when I first woke up, I didn't know what happened. And then, unfortunately for me in that moment, the memories started to come in. And hazy memories from the night before came in. And I felt a little bit numb actually. The fear came over me when I started to piece together, how did I get here? How did I get here in a jail cell? Why have I woken up in this place? And the memories started to come back. The night before, the day before, drinking all day with my friends, going to a club in the city. And then the vague memory of the end of the club coming, and I had a drink in my hand. And I remember one of the bouncers, a very big, burly, as a lot of them are, Maori, Kiwi, was trying to get me out of the club and trying to take my drink off me. And again, this is a vague memory, but I remember he tried to take the drink off me, and I wasn't very happy about that, and something took over, and I attacked. And so this very large bouncer, assisted by some other very large bouncers, probably wouldn't have taken too many of them, then escorted me out of the club and threw me straight into the arms of waiting police. And the police took me to the jail, took me to the cell. And so I blacked out a couple of times, and the next thing I remember is I remember being in the cell and there was other people there, and I blacked out. If anyone has ever drank before or taken recreational drugs, when there is gaps in your memory, you're not commanding your consciousness, someone or something else is. So I complete blackout, but the next thing I remember is I grew up in Ireland, in the north of Ireland. The next thing I remember is I'm in a jail cell and I'm punching at it wasn't like metal bar, it was like a Perspex clear glass, or like a clear plastic thing. And I was punching at the inside of this Perspex um, cover, and I'm singing Irish Republican songs. I'm so drunk, I'm so wasted, I'm so completely lost. I think that I'm in Ireland in a jail, and I'm singing from my past Irish Republican songs. I think that I'm in a jail in Belfast or Derry or somewhere. Not that I ever had been, but this is what had taken over my being. And I'm singing at the top of my voice, and I'm doing all of these songs, and I'm just like really trying to bait the police, who again I don't even really remember how I got there, but I'm singing at the top of my voice and disturbing the other inmates. And so I don't know how long this went on, but it went on for a while. They must have had a lot of patience, these Australian policemen, but eventually they probably just had enough. They probably had enough of me shouting and screaming and doing all the things I did, and singing songs and believing that they are um, Royal Ulster Constabulary Police from Northern Ireland when we're actually in Brisbane, Australia. So eventually I think they had enough. And so a few of them came into the cell and took me out. And again, this is a vague memory, but one thing I remember was one of the policemen whispered in my ear, "We're taking you somewhere where there's no cameras." And then the next thing I remember is the other one taking the thumbs on my fingers and bending them back into my arms. And then they took me somewhere and gave me a good beating. So then I don't remember anything after that. Then we get to the point I wake up. I wake up the next morning. I'm in jail. I have no idea what happened. I don't remember the stuff that's happened. It's just very, very vague, and that fear comes over me. And I think to myself, how have I got here again? I mean, I've never been in jail before, but how have I woken up with this drink-induced fear, this drink-induced horrible experience where you're waking up and you don't know what's happening, you don't know why it's happened, why are you here, and then the guilt and the shame and it's all coming through, and I'm just feeling so empty. And you know, if you've had an experience like that, or if you haven't, I'm sure you can imagine. You think, you know, when you have an experience like that, you probably think, I'm not going to do this again. This is probably in 2010 or 2011, something like that. You think, you know, you'd have a regret. And so eventually I get let out. So I spend the night in jail, get let out, battered and bruised, feeling very sore. I get let out. And I actually still can't remember this. At some stage I go to court for this. I can't remember if it was the next day or if it was a while afterwards, but I only fill in the details of what actually happened by the lawyer who represented me in court and told me the details of what happened and told the court. And so I was in Australia on a short-term visa, and if I had been, you know, convicted for this, I could have been put out of the country right away. And so this lawyer actually got me off due to good behavior, hadn't any history of anything before, and so actually I got away with, maybe it was a fine or something like that. Thankfully, no one was injured. I'm sure that I just bounced off that beautiful Maori Kiwi who put me out, but I remember getting out, either out of the court or out of the jail. I can't remember which. This is so crazy, but I'm telling this story. And you would think, you know, I would think now, you think, okay, that's happened, something horrible has happened. Okay, I'm not going to do that. But what did I do? I went straight to the pub again. I called my friends who had been with the night before, who we were living with, and we went straight to the pub again. And then we went and laughed about me getting arrested, me hitting a bouncer, me getting put in jail for the night, me getting a beating. Again, I don't even know if I remembered that part. And then I went and did it all over again. Alcohol and recreational drugs, but particularly alcohol for me, has such an insane power over the human consciousness to make us do things that we would never, ever, ever, ever do otherwise. Like, to even tell this story, I can't even imagine that this is the same being that's looking through these eyes now, but it is. But alcohol is an accepted drug, a toxin, a poison, carcinogenic drug that is so ingrained in our society, so accepted and so just natural. I grew up in Ireland. It's like not if you're going to drink, it's when you're going to start and how much you're going to get on with it. And you know, it's rife across the world. And it's one of these things that I feel like it's important to talk about, because I did things under the influence of alcohol that I would never even dream in my wildest nightmare that I would do. And yet still to this day, this toxin, this mind altering, soul sucking thing is still widely accepted, although younger generations are still are much more, you know, being not as influenced. They're not going there as much, but they might be getting sucked more into technology. So there's always a way. But I wanted to share this story today because it came to me as I was driving the other day, like how far I've come from there. So again, the thought is now, after something like that was happening, you think like you would, okay, I made a mistake, I got drunk, I did something very stupid, I'm sorry about it. No, straight back and did it again. I mean, didn't have the same, but I went back to that alcohol. The pull, the addiction, the strength, the effects of that drug is so insane that I can hardly imagine and recognize the being that was affected by that. But so many are using it now as a crutch. I was using it always because I felt uncomfortable within myself. I felt like socially awkward. I felt like I needed an escape from a pain that was inside me, and all it did was magnify that pain. But for a short moment, I would forget about the pain. And again, if you've ever drank alcohol or taken recreational drugs, and there's parts that you don't remember, that is your consciousness being completely taken over, mostly by lower astral beings, and whatever they will, they will. When you don't have command of your consciousness, and alcohol opens the doorway to these lower astral realms, That's why the vast majority of violence happens through alcohol. It's not through drugs. The vast majority of things that have happened through alcohol, is what you see. It's what you see in most cities and towns, and relationship breakups. And alcohol is not, it's not the cause, but it's the accepted symptom, or the escape of the pain body of humanity, as Eckhart Tolle would say. But just getting back to the thought, whenever you do something like that, you think, okay, you would change, you would do something. So I don't know if it was 2010 or 2011, but that's one of those. Let's just say it was 2011. I still continued to drink, party, continued to do what I was doing for another 3 years after that. 3 more years of going through that. I didn't end up in jail. It wasn't like that extreme violence and the things that happened there, but there was this extreme pain inside. There was this suffering, this searching, this harming of relationships, this hurting, this going into spaces where you don't remember what has happened. You wake up the next day and you feel guilt, you feel shame, you feel the fear. And I'm wondering, have you had an experience like this? And when we're young, we joke about this. Oh, I don't remember what happened when we were younger. Oh, it's funny. I was so drunk, I don't remember what happened. Imagine what has happened that you don't remember. And I'm going to tell you, with consciousness expanding, you can't imagine what has happened. You can't imagine what has happened when we have let ourselves get so intoxicated by drink or drugs that there is energies that influence us, and you literally can't imagine, and you don't want to. But the fact that it took me another 3, maybe 4 years to actually come out of that is just amazing to me. And I just want to say, if anyone who watches this video or sees this video are struggling with addiction, struggling with alcohol, particularly men, women as well, but particularly men, and you are still using it as a crutch, you're still using it as a way to relax, you're still using it as a way to take the edge off, you're still using it as a way to celebrate. There's no judgment. At 20 years, I was deep in this. I lived and breathed it. I'm not judging. But what I am saying, from being 14 years clean and sober, and never will this body ever take another drink or recreational drugs in this lifetime. That I'm not 12-step one a day at a time. I know there's nothing could happen. There is no circumstance. There is nothing that could happen that would mean that I would take an alcoholic drink in this life. Nothing. I went through every scenario. There's nothing. I just want to say to you, if you hear this and if you're struggling with it and you're challenged with this, to really seek for support, seek help. Firstly, admit it to yourself. Firstly, just this can be the most challenging thing, just really take an honest look at your life and see, is it working for me? Because some people it doesn't go that extreme, and some people it's not as damaging as others, but it is a carcinogenic toxin poison that some bodies deal with better than others. But it is a poison. Mental, physical, emotional, and spiritual poison. But if you're struggling with it and you feel like you want to change, and you feel like you want to, you're in a culture or you're in an environment where it's expected, never mind tolerated, I just invite you just to reach out, to ask for help, to take stock of what are you getting from that, and is it worth it? And your mind and the part of you thinks it helps you relax, it helps you continue with your life in a better way, it will lie to you, because it lied to me for many years. Our mind and the addicted behaviors, it will lie, and it will gloss over the destruction that it has for our physical bodies, for our emotional responses to life, for our relationships, our families. And I just invite you to reach out. Don't let it go as far as I let it go. Don't wait until you're faced with the choice a couple of years later, where it's like, literally, do you want to live or do you want to die? That was the choice. My liver shut down. I ended up in hospital in New Zealand, and I drank for 6 weeks every day. And I got to the point where my liver is literally pulsating as I say this. It was a decision. Do you want to live or do you want to die? You don't have to go to that extreme. Maybe you will, maybe you won't, but I just want to say that there are ways and means and people who can support it, people who have been through it, and people who are much farther along the line than I am. But I'd like to reach out to men particularly because alcohol is a huge scourge on the masculine population. And it was I wouldn't change anything. I wouldn't change a single thing. It gave me so many beautiful, powerful experiences as learnings. But I also see that there's so much unnecessary suffering, so much unnecessary addiction, so much unnecessary violence and things that are, again, alcohol is not the cause, it is a symptom of an underlying source pain, a source loneliness, a source feeling of unwellness, non-wellness. So if you are struggling or you know someone is struggling, I am very open to support you. But if you're in for a quick fix, or you just want to reduce it in some way and keep 1 foot in and 1 foot out, I can't support it because I tried it and it didn't work. This idea of everything in moderation, we would never say that. No one would say a little bit of cyanide in moderation is fine. A little bit of heroin in moderation is fine. A little bit of beating your wife is fine. A moderate amount of violence is fine. No one would say that. But we do say that moderation in alcohol is fine. Moderation in toxic foods, that's fine. Moderation in whatever the addictions, so many of the addictions. Again, I'm not judging here in any way. I still have addictions with, I've transformed my addictions into kind of spiritual things, but I still have addictions with social media, with dopamine, like these little devices, social media. So not judging here, just offering a perspective from someone that is 14 years clean from substances, and that I'm open to help and serve if you are open, particularly men, but anyone. But it would only be if you have to get to a point where you're not willing to put yourself, your family, and the world through this again. Even when I got out of that jail that day, I was straight back to the pub. I was willing to do that to myself again. I was willing to take the chance that I don't remember the next time that I might not wake up. It took a life or death decision. Again, my liver is pulsating as I say this. It took a life or death decision to stop for me. But it doesn't need to be that way. You don't need to ruin your relationship. You don't need to ruin your body to the point of where it's going to, shut down and you're off to the next adventure. I just, wanted to share this story today. And I feel like there's so much defensiveness when you talk about alcohol. It's like, it would be like me at the time. Someone had told me you need to stop drinking. I would have told them get. I'm going to use that Aussie slang. No, I wouldn't have listened to them. I was so attached to the identity as a drinker, and that I get to do this, or I deserve. I talked about it in another video this week about deserving. Like I deserve this. Deserve. De being the opposite. You're deserving yourself when you think that you deserve something. I deserve the treat of a drink at the end of a hard week's work. No, you don't. You don't deserve. You deserve your body. You deserve your relationships when you poison yourself. The most poisonous thing that we have is our thoughts. Human thought. And that is the real core, is what we think, what we believe, how we see the world. Alcohol, drugs, and any other porn addiction, any other external addiction are the symptom, and it is a tool that we use to manage the symptom of the inner pain of a thought, of a belief, of an idea that I'm not good enough, that I'm shy, that I'm whatever it is, I'm afraid. And that accepted crutch, that accepted tool has become so accepted that it's nearly sacrosanct. Alcohol is the only drug that causes cancer, that kills people, that ruins relationships, that kills people slowly, that you have to explain why you don't use it. And this might trigger some people. I don't care. If this triggers you, it's for you and it's not for you. You can turn off. But if someone has to explain why they are not drinking and that their friend circle is going to shrink because they do that, that is not real friendship. That is not real family. Again, imagine having to justify why I don't take heroin, why I don't snort cocaine anymore, why I don't beat people. Imagine having to justify that. But you do. When someone asks, you don't drink alcohol, what do you mean? Well, why? Why don't you drink? This is the devil's juice. This is a tool. This is something that has been used and turned on humanity in a way to control the masses, to control the mind, to govern the mind, to keep people toxic, to keep people searching, to keep people in a lower vibration. And it's used very well by lower energy beings to siphon energy and to externalize pain. So again, I'm just sharing this to those who know that it's an issue for them. If it's not an issue for you, it's not. This is not for you. If you think it's not an issue for you, it's not for you. But for those who it is, and most importantly, you're ready to change your story. You're ready to change your identity. You're ready to change your circle of so-called friends, your circle of beings that you spend time with. If you're ready to move from addictions to awareness, if you're ready to move this addictive tendency, this energy, into action that becomes abundance, that becomes open, that becomes creative, that becomes generative, that becomes life-giving, that becomes who you really came here to be. I can show you, like I have, how to redirect those addictive tendencies into something that works for you, that works for your life, that works for your family, and works for the world. If that's you or it's someone you know, send them this video, comment below, send me a DM, and we can look at this together, work together to move you from addictions to awareness so that you maybe don't wake up in jail like I did one day. Until next time, from my heart to yours, the divine in me sees, loves, and honors the divine in you. Namaste. We